This is the Friday, August 26th, 2016 version of the Market Plus segment. Joining us now is Darin Newsom. Darin, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, we have a lot of questions from our social media followers. A lot of folks undoubtedly read your column this week. You put wheat on their minds. Everybody's curious about wheat.
Rightfully so.
Kick it off with something different.
Okay.
Talk about the cotton market, unchanged on the week. We had a lot of red.
Yeah.
Cotton was in the gray this week.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
I think it's starting to stabilize. We were in a sideways pattern for a long time. When you finally break out of a sideways pattern, either up or down, you're going to go a long ways one way or the other. Well, we went up, but we didn't necessarily have the support, the buying interest to keep us up there, so we came crashing back down over the last couple of weeks. But now we've stabilized. We've found that equilibrium price where everyone seems to be relatively happy or at least content at this point, and it's above that previous range that we had. So while I'm still not overly bullish the cotton market, I think, since we did break out to the upside and we didn't fall back and go below the downside, I think this market could try to, again, stabilize in here and maybe start to find some buying along the way.
If we do start to establish a range like we had before, do you expect it to be the same size? We were 56 to 65, now we'll be 68 to 74.
That seems the most logical destination for cotton right now. We've ridden through some of the problems, weather problems in the Texas area, certainly in the southeast part of the United States, and this is where we wound up. So yes, I would anticipate us now developing another range, just stacking it on top of the old range.
Okay. To get started here with our social media questions, we've got a question from Drew in Montezuma, Iowa. He's on Twitter at DrewRemp, and he's asking, with Pro Farmer and the USDA believing there is a large crop, is there a chance for a pre-harvest rally? You mentioned on the show, probably not.
Well, we've had the pre-harvest rally.
Okay.
That's what we saw as the reaction to the USDA report. So say from August 12th, I guess was the day of the report, up through really this Friday.
Yeah.
The corn market held. There was one time in there where we had something like 6 or 7 days in a row. Now, I say that we had 6 or 7 days in a row closing higher. I think we gained 8 cents. That was the pre-harvest rally. Now what's going to happen, or at least what probably should happen, is market's going to go quiet and kind of run quiet here for a while until we start to get those actual yield numbers coming in. And there's going to be a lot of data coming in off those combines, reporting immediately what those yields are, and those are going to be accumulated. That, I think, is the next big market mover.
Now, it seems to be, and a lot of our analysts have stated that they believe the market seems to believe a national corn yield between 170, 173, fairly decent range. Let's say yield reports come in from the combines and they are consistently, we're going to hit USDA's 175 target. What's the downside target for this corn market?
If we come in 175 or higher?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna break this market easily back below the 2014 lows of 318 and a quarter. Most likely, we're going to fall back into that pre-demand market range. So we're talking about pre-2006. So, all of a sudden we're talking about high side of 3. I don't really want to say that the low side was down around 150, but that's where it was. Back into that long-term sideways pattern that we had.
Now, in that situation, we're also most likely going to see basis collapse across the I-states. Given that that is a possibility, if not a probability, do you want to be aggressive, or do you want to make preventative sales or some risk management in place here today?
Really, the only thing that's been available to corn producers, and it's more on the risky side, this entire time, basically going back, a year or so to that July rally back in 2015, has been selling calls, and then when it falls down, selling puts. Certainly don't want to do that right now. As we're coming up on another harvest, I don't want to be short a bunch of puts. This is not a recommended strategy because it is a limited reward, unlimited risk sort of situation. But given the higher volatility that we've had for most of this stretch, that was the opportunity. Volatility's been sucked out of this market now. We're going to sit and wait.
Okay.
What can we do? It's a tough call right now. Basis should weaken. Futures should weaken. Cash should therefore weaken. It's going to be real tough to get much price protection on at this point.
Okay. Buckle in.
Going to have to buckle up for a little while because 2017 I'm not going to say it's going to be better, but there's certain things that could come into play that could make it a little bit better.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that we'll end our corn discussion on a high note there as we look out to 2017. Next, I want to talk to Stephen in Virginia. He's on Twitter at Celis1994. He's asking, when the frost scare comes, and it will, are beans the only crop that can still be hurt, and will the market care?
You know, of the major crops, yeah, that's really the only one. Corn's really beyond that at this point, unless something happens this weekend, and it's not supposed to. You know, soybeans maturity are also running a little bit ahead of schedule, so it's going to have to be something quick. You know, within the next couple of weeks, we're going to see some sort of major weather change. But really, you know, August is the time of year that makes soybean crops supposedly. So, you know, we're almost free and clear of that. So, if something's going to happen, yeah, it would probably be the soybean crop.
Okay. We've got two questions that are basically asking the same thing. Matt in Northeast Michigan at Schwab Matt on Twitter and John in Mid-Missouri at Jay Hansman on Twitter are both asking. Matt says wheat is a great rotation crop here in Michigan, and they're both asking, is it worth planting this fall?
Question.
Is there any incentive to plant it this fall?
This is a question I've addressed in a couple columns now. We've talked about it. You lose money for every bushel you produce, in most cases. Now, there could be some isolated cases, and I heard from some folks over out east where it was still profitable, and then the straw and everything else was still a good market for them. So it was still profitable. If you can if you can pencil it out, yeah, by all means, plant it. But if you're like the majority of wheat producers here in the United States who are losing anywhere from 50 cents to $2 plus per bushel, show me the argument as to why it should be planted in the first place this fall.
It's always been a great grazing crop. Can I plant it and then lease grazing acres?
You know, there's a lot of acres being grazed. There's a lot of those contracts being written right now. So that's going to also be a very competitive, because everybody who is, you know, planting wheat is going to be looking at doing that same thing. And so what happens to those grazing rates? You know, if you don't have something locked in, they start coming down as well. So there goes your winter income off of this crop that's might not be anything more than a cover crop come next spring.
Do you just leave it fallow?
Why not?
Okay.
What cost do you have in that? I mean, outside of the fact, and visiting with some folks in Kansas, you know, you got to put something down to keep it from blowing all winter. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're going to have some cost in it, but if all you do is plant it and leave it alone, your cost is going to be minimal. But if you can leave it fallow and avoid all costs, you know, until maybe 2017 is a better situation, why not? Show me the argument as to why that wouldn't work.
Here's a question from an Iowa boy who's fairly unfamiliar with the practical applications of wheat to a Kansas boy. If I let my wheat grow, don't touch it, will it self-seed?
Yeah. I mean, you'll get some volunteer.
Yeah, I mean, if I ran back over it again with a cultipacker,
you'll get some volunteer. It'll drop its kernels, and you'll get some volunteer. Yeah.
So you could seed.
Now, you know, it's been a long time since I've been in the wheat field.
Okay.
I mean, it's been so maybe there are some traits now that don't allow that. But if you think about it, seed wheat is nothing more than combining, putting it in the bin, pulling it out, cleaning it the next spring or the next fall, and going on.
Planting it.
So yeah, you know, it will seed itself. It's a grass. It'll
That's
seed
what I was.
itself.
That's what I was
Some would
wondering.
say it's a weed. You know, there's
Poverty
that argument
grass.
is.
Yeah. So now we've got a question from Phil in Ontario, Canada. He's asking, given all of these factors that are taking place, do you expect a big move away from wheat and corn into planting soybeans for 2017?
I'll answer Phil this way. We were losing money on corn in 2015, and we increased acres by 6 million, supposedly. So no, we're not going to move away from corn acres. We're not going to do it. We might reduce them a little bit next year, but it's not going to be anything huge. Could we see fewer wheat acres? Yeah, I think we will. We've been seeing that trend now for quite some time. Where will it go? Logically, the best place is for it to go into soybeans. I mean, because that is, again, the market where the most demand is. But what could happen there is we oversupply, just as we have with milo, corn, so wheat down the line.
We lose 3 or 4 million wheat acres, 3 or 4 million corn acres.
And they all go into soybeans.
Yeah, 90 million bean acres.
Yeah.
That's
going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
Final question for you, Darin. Why? We've been talking a lot about wheat. Why should corn farmers care about the wheat market?
Couple reasons. One, wheat is a replacement in feed for corn. But to me, there's a much more philosophical reason why corn growers should pay attention to what's going on in the wheat market. Because as we just talked about, we plant corn whether it can make money or not, and we increase our production every year, Mother Nature willing. Wheat is showing us what happens when supplies get so large, so much larger than demand. We have a real problem on our hands. And that is a lesson that corn growers could learn from what's going on in the wheat market these days.
Okay. All right, Darin. Hopefully the next time we have you on, we will get to call you Mr. Happy without sarcasm.
Yeah, that would
Maybe
really
the
be
Royals
something.
will be in the series.
Maybe the Royals will be in the series again.
All right, things to hope for. Darin, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Always enjoy it. Thanks, Mike.
And thanks to all of you for sending in your questions via Facebook and Twitter. Please continue to do so. Remember to support your local public television station and let them know you do value market to market. And tune in next week, and we'll get more expert analysis right to you.